Today on the Because Family podcast, I'm going to let you know everything you need to about video game ratings. Hi there, welcome to the Because Family podcast. I'm your host, Michael Prince, the director of Because Family, a nonprofit ministry that exists to inspire and equip parents to be the first influence in the lives of their children. There are a number of ways you can help out our nonprofit. Number one is by visiting some of our affiliates. We're affiliated with Unglue, which gives you a great way to monitor the screen time for your kids. Another one is Accountable to You, which is an accountability software that will report to you if anything inappropriate has been viewed by anybody that signs up to use whose device is covered by your Accountable to You account. And then you can just straight up donate, whether it's on Patreon, on PayPal, or through the Assemblies of God Missions Department. If you want to go to becausefamily.org/partnership, you can learn all about the many ways to keep our nonprofit doing the work that we're doing and benefiting as many families as we can. We reached over 100,000 families last year through our blog, podcasts, videos, and other outreaches that we've done. So please help us reach 200, 400, 800,000 more. I just want to talk to you briefly about video game ratings. Everyone's kids love to play video games, whether it's a simple little puzzle game on the iPad, something like Lego Star Wars or Lego Marvel, or first-person shooter games, strategy games, games on the computer, games on the TV through the Wii or through the Wii, through the Nintendo Switch, through the PlayStation, through the Xbox, whatever they like to play video games. Every kid pretty much enjoys it at some level. And so we need to understand the content in some of these video games. Now, I've written a lot about video games, and I've done even a podcast recently about video game addiction, because that is a real thing. But I'm going to talk today just about, hey, your kids are going to play games, and if they're going to play video games, here's what you need to know about the rating system. The reason this is fresh on my radar is because the Esrb, or the Entertainment Software Rating Board, the Esrb, came out recently with news that they are going to be notifying parents in the ratings box on games if there are in-game purchases through those games. And what that means is if your kid can buy armor or weapons or other types of gear or something like that in the game, then he or she can spend money in that game, and they feel like, and I agree, parents should know about that. And so they've opened it up to where now you can see that if there's in-game purchases. So it'll say rated T for teen, or rated M for mature, or whatever. But next to that, it's going to say why it's got that rating. And it'll say sexual content, violence, nudity, whatever it has. And now it'll also say that there are in-game purchases allowed. So this is great news for families. The other thing that they've said as they release this news is that they've put up a parent tools section from the ESRB. If you just Google ESRB parent tools, or if you go to our article about this at familytechblog.com, we have a link to it in there, and you'll see, and I'll put a link to it also below the show notes for this podcast. But you can see at that parent tools site a bunch of different things, including how to set up the parental controls on different game systems that have parental controls built in. Not all of them have them. Some of the older ones especially don't. But most of the new ones do have parental controls of some kind. And so they have tutorials for each kind, very easy to navigate and find and learn from. They also have a resource center that's going to tell you about games, why it's rated, what it's rated, how they came to that conclusion, what sexual content actually means in a video game versus what it would mean in a movie or something like that. And so I recommend that you check that out. And let's talk a little bit about the rating system for video games. Okay, we're familiar with the rating systems for movies. Now, I have a video I did a couple years ago about the movie rating system that gives you the history of it and really interesting background on it. Something that I started called the Parent Toolkit. I recommend you check that out. It's on our YouTube channel, the Because Family YouTube channel. I recommend you check that out because it's very informative. And it's not that different than the game rating system in that it's basically a board of people that we don't know who they are that see the content in these games and then make a decision based on what's in it. Games are notorious for violence, especially gun violence, for blood and gore. They're notorious for bad language. But some things parents sometimes don't realize is that most of these games, if they're rated M for mature, they also have full nudity And they also often have sexual content, sex scenes like a movie would, a rated R or sometimes even worse movie. And the issue here is that these games are interactive. So when you're watching a movie, you're just watching someone else do something on a screen. Not saying that's right or wrong or better or worse, but what I'm saying is it is different, because when you're playing a video game, you have invested into this character, that you are this person. And so when you are playing this game and you're immersed in this game and you're doing what this person does, when it does something extra violent or extra wrong, or depending on if you think it's wrong, or something sexual or something like that, it's your brain physically has a different reaction to it than it does just watching a movie and separating yourself with that fourth wall. Video games bring down what they call the fourth wall. So I've got my wall here, I've got a wall here, I've got a wall behind me, and the screen is my fourth wall that you see, and you see through to see me. But in a movie, that fourth wall is very rarely comes down to where the audience is a part of the action. But in video games, there is no fourth wall. You are in it. You're in that scenario with them. And so it makes it very different. The ESRB rating system includes E for everyone, E10, so everyone 10 and older, T for teen, M for mature, which is 17 plus, and then adult games rated 18 plus only. Now, this has to do with who's allowed to purchase the game. So if you want to go in and buy a game at Walmart and it's an M or adult game, typically you have to purchase, have an ID. Now, you're not always asked for your ID when you go to buy a game. They're supposed to, but it's like anything else. Sometimes they don't. They also then use content descriptors. So the next to the, just like this right here, that you'll see right next to it'll say comic mischief or mild lyrics. It'll say why it's got the rating it got. If it's rated T for teen, it'll often say stuff like violence or things like that. But if it's not bloody and gory, it'll still get a T for teen rating. Or M for mature would be something with blood and gore. Scary stuff sometimes will show up there, violence. And then it also has notify you about interactive elements, like in-game purchases. Allows you to interact with users if you can share your location, and if there's unrestricted internet in the game, if you're able to access the internet in the software or the game, then it'll let you know that as well. And so the rating system's very good and very important, and you need to pay attention to it. I know too many parents who come to me and are like, my son's playing Call of Duty. Is this game okay for my kid? I'm like, how old is he? Well, he's 12. I'm like, well, technically it's a rated M for mature game. It is? What does that mean? I'm like, well, it means you're not supposed to play it unless you're 17 or older, because when you shoot somebody, they explode. And they are using adult language throughout the game. To my knowledge, there's not any nudity or sexual content in that game, but many games do have that sort of thing. Something like Wolfenstein 3D, games like that. There's a lot of games out there that have very adult content, and a lot of young kids are playing it because parents don't pay attention to these movie ratings. But it's very important that you do that. And as they say at the ESRB website, it's even more important that you know the games your kids play. You can play them yourself with your kids. You can play them, watch somebody play them on YouTube. I play some games on YouTube and on Facebook. Nothing really super new that kids are into, because I don't have the budget to buy new video games, and I don't have a console either. But that's something that you can find on YouTube. Find guys and girls that play these games, and learn from them. Learn what the game's all about, what the content is, and you can watch it and go, oh, my kid's never playing this. Or you can watch it and go, okay, this looks like it might be fine. The other thing you need to remember is this interactive element. The fact that kids are playing with other people, and video games aren't something that is just a kid thing anymore. Video games are very common amongst adult men, especially adult men, and especially single adult men. And so if your kids are playing video games and they're chatting with people online, it's very possible they have a completely different identity within that game than anything you know about. And that can lead to trouble and lead to problems. I've heard stories of guys playing games on their computer with other people, kids doing this, and their parents find out later that they've got this network of friends, and half of the friends are 20, 30 years older than them, and they've talked about doing meetups and stuff like that, and it's just not always a safe thing, a good idea. Some of the most common games right now, popular games, are number one is Fortnite. Fortnite's very popular. It's very it's a what you'd call a royal. What is it called? A royal battle royale game. Sorry, it's called a battle royale game, and this is where 100 and something people. Each character represents a real person playing the game. They land on an island and they all fight against each other. They find weapons and go off shooting each other to be the last man standing. And they can team up. They can make teams with people all over the world and chat with those people, whether through microphone or through typing. And they can build things and craft things and stuff. It's a pretty cool game. It's a very creative game, very interesting, but it's also very interactive with other players. And it's you're shooting each other, but it's less realistic than some games like it. I mean, this is a copycat of some games like H1Z1 and PUBG, which stands for PlayerUnknown's Battleground. So it's kind of a copycat of those games, but it's a less realistic, more cartoon-like violence than the others. And I'm not sure what the rating is on Fortnite. I'm going to check right now. T. Yeah, it's rated T for teen. So the violence is cartoonish, fictional, but there is online play features online play where you can chat with other people and that sort of thing. It's a shooter action game. So that one's very popular. Some other games, horror games are very popular, like Outlast and some things like that. Call of Duty, every time a new Call of Duty comes out, it's very popular. This one is no different. You play online with people, you form what you would call a guild maybe, or a team who squads who fight with each other every time you come together. And this also creates a schedule issue or a screen time issue, because if you're playing in a squad, so to speak, and you have all these other kids who want you to meet up with them to play in game, not in real life, but in game, and your parents say, hey, you got to clean your room before you play the game, but you're supposed to be on at 1 o'clock to play, and you're going to get angry. You're going to have problems with your kids because they're not going to want to give up that deadline. They're going to be harming the abilities of their squad, they feel like, if they don't show up on time to play. And this causes problems in some households. I know of kids who sit and play video games for 6 to 12 hours a day on the weekends and in the summer. And a lot of times it's because they've told the people that they play with, I'm going to be on and we're going to play together. And that can cause some trouble. Another thing to remember is that a lot of games that are available on something like a PlayStation or Xbox are also becoming more and more available on a phone, especially iOS and Android. And so it's getting what they call ported over. So they take all of it and they kind of inject it into an app and allow you to download the app and play the game there as well. And sometimes it's like a dumbed down version of the game, but it still gives you the ability to play these games. So you may think, well, my kid doesn't have an Xbox or he doesn't have a PlayStation. All he has is an iPad. So that's easier, that's better, that's safer. But it's not entirely true. There are games that are available to them through the app stores that are the same, or they're at least copycats and very, very similar to what you can play on the computer. Something like, and I mentioned it in the Family Tech Blog podcast, or Family Tech Update podcast last week, something like Rules of Survival is a game where you play and you're shooting each other, and it's very similar to this, but it is bloody and gory, and there's, again, live chat with either people in your team or anyone playing on the map. And so it becomes an issue where you think you're cool and you think it's all good because they don't have a console to play on, but in reality they can just play it on their iPhone or their iPad or their Android device, and there you go. So yeah, overall, I'd say pay attention to these video games. You need to be seeing what they're playing, learn about the games that they're asking for. They need to have to ask you before they buy a game. Now, there's another thing that is an issue, is most games now you don't have to go out and buy a physical copy. You can just buy the game on the device. So you go to the game store on your Xbox and you purchase the game you want to play. And that's super cool and convenient. But they don't have to ask you. You don't have to give them permission. And if you haven't set up any parental controls on their Xboxes or PlayStation, they can buy whatever game they want, and it's like they're an adult. So that's something you need to know. And the parent tools that you'll see under this video, or above the video, under the audio, in the on the blog post for this podcast episode. You'll find that there, and the parent tools part for ESRB, and that is where you need to go to learn how to set up parental controls on whatever console your kids have. If you want to set up parental controls on app downloads for Androids, or not Androids, but for iOS devices, I have that at familytechblog.com. You can find the tutorials there on how to set iCloud Family Share and how to set some of that stuff up. So anyway, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Because Family podcast, as we just kind of pick out a topic here and there every now and then and cover it for you on the podcast here. Thank you for listening. Please go to becausefamily.org/partnership and sign up to give $1, $2, or $5 to help us out. I'm going to be doing another Hush-a-thon coming up in the next few weeks, and so yeah, be looking out for that so you can donate to keep me quiet. And thanks for that. And anyway, thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Because Family podcast.